so much for joining us here at The Research Her, the show working to improve the health disparities for women of color, one topic at a time. I am Alicia. I'm here learning and growing with you as we research our way to well-being. Today, we speak with Dr. Ebony Butler, who is a native of M.I. cricket letter I, humpback I, and is a licensed psychologist and food relationship strategist. Dr. Ebony earned her Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Jackson State University and her PhD in Counseling Psychology from University of Houston. Dr. Ebony specializes in guiding women to develop skills that increase their effectiveness in interpersonal interactions, including communication and asking for what they want and need. Dr. Ebony is specifically interested in issues that impact marginalized communities. She's also the creator of the My Therapy cards, and if you have yet to get you some, get you some. So without further ado, let's talk to Dr. Ebony. Okay, so we're going to jump into our icebreaker questions. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Nice. So if you were not a therapist, what would you do?
Without a doubt, I would be a cosmetologist. So before I actually went into grad school, the year was ending for the GRE score. So you know how it's only valid for 5 years. I was at my last year and I was like, I'm not taking this test again. I'm going to apply to this program. And if I don't get into this one, I'm going to hair school. So I got into the program and that's that. But other than that, I've always wanted to own my own hair salon. I've always wanted to do hair. I grew up in a salon. So I've always kind of like envisioned that I would be doing some blend of therapy and hair at some point in my life.
So what's your favorite hairstyles to do, like braids or?
So back in the day, my favorite hairstyle used to be a roller set. So I used to do a good roller set or a good roller wrap.
Nice. My mama would love you.
Yes, it's kind of old school. Now, though, my favorite has to be like crochet and braids. And I've just kind of figured out a way, which probably is nothing new to me, but a way to box braid my own hair with the crochet method. I'm excited about it.
Nice. So if you had to eat only one thing for the rest of your life, what would that one thing be?
That is so hard. I probably would want, this is going to sound so weird. So I have a bag of mixed nuts that I can eat all day long. So if I could just probably survive off of that, I think I'd be good.
Can you share with us what the hardest part about being a therapist is?
The hardest part is not being able to reach as many people as I want to, because of state guidelines and borders and all of that. And we can't practice outside of our jurisdictions and that is so expensive. Outside of that, I can't really resolve people's issues for them. And sometimes I have to sit with, I don't know how we're going to do that. I don't know what that's going to look like for you. So I think that's the hardest part. It's like seeing people come to me with so much hope and then telling them, that's just something you have to sit through.
If you could change something about psychology research, what would it be? Because you tend to cite a few studies that you see and you don't be with the shits. You be like, no sis, not going.
Not happening. So I would really wish that we would stop talking to and doing work with them for ourselves. It almost seems like we're doing research so our colleagues can see how smart we are. And to see just how much we're doing. Like I said, we're still competing. And the information is not getting out to the people who it needs to get out to. And so as researchers, we go into these populations to study, to gather information, and we don't put anything back into these populations. We don't put anything back into the communities where we're gathering all of this great data. And then we go present it at conferences where these people can't even attend. So we're disseminating information amongst ourselves with the idea that those people who are at the conferences are going to then take it back to the communities in which they work. And that doesn't happen. Like you've been to conferences, I've been to conferences. Like you're motivated while you're there, but that's probably where it stops. When you get back on that plane and you go back to where you work, you're going to continue your daily grind, and you rarely are going to reach back into those communities many times and give that information back and thank them for allowing you to do research in their communities. We don't do that. And that's one thing that I wish we would do more of. And I wish that our research included more Black people in the positive light, instead of Black people always being on the end of pathology and something being wrong and kind of us studying issues rather than things that are very very positive and that's helping to move us forward.
Yeah, you just named a bunch of things and they all are, I'm just listening. I'm like, that applies to so many different fields. Like even as a chemist, I think about some of the studies that have been done with regards to different diseases. Let's just talk about diabetes. There are all these studies out here that show like we can determine, find these biomarkers. And then you look at the study and it's done on all Chinese people or it's done on all white men. And it's like, so is this applicable to us? Probably not.
Probably not. Exactly. Probably not.
Yeah. But if you were doing research, what do you think you would pay attention to? Like, what would you study?
So I did my dissertation on Black women and sexuality and the ways that we internalize sexual scripts, stereotypes, definitely within media. At the point that I did my dissertation, I was looking at hip hop. So I was looking at shows like For the Love of Ray J, Flavor of Love, Real Housewives of Atlanta was just starting. So I was looking at the ways that Black women are depicted and the ways that we then take that information, internalize it, and use it to negotiate and navigate our own sexual experiences. So I would still be doing that same research because we know now that this is even more of a thing now with WAP. This whole thing about some of us are with it, some of us are against it, but really studying our sexual experiences and our sexual expression and why many times we feel that is wrong for being sexual beings and wrong for being proud of who we are. I don't think a lot of us realize just how much of the messaging about us as sexual beings being wrong that we've internalized. And so you'll see people say, oh, that's just too much. That should be kept in private and nobody should be talking about that. And I don't think that we realize just how much we have learned to silence ourselves in that way and just how much that takes away our power. So I would love to do more research in that area about our sexual experiences and definitely how trauma impacts that. And not just sexual trauma, but racial trauma and seeing how that impacts the way that we identify as sexual beings as Black women.
You are a food relationship therapist. How would you say it? You specialize in food relationships?
So yeah, let's just be real. I made it up.
I know that's right. Let's keep it real, sis.
Yeah, I made up the title. It's a food relationship strategist, and I'll tell you where it came from. I started out in 2015 with a company with my sister where we were helping Black women lose weight. That just did not sit well with me. It still made me feel like I was a part of the problem that made people feel guilty and ashamed about their weight, as if being in their bodies was wrong. And so I didn't like it. I always knew that there was something mental, largely mental about the entire thing. And I was like, I've got to do more. There is nobody in the field kind of talking about it in that way. And so I was like, oh, well, it must be health and wellness coach. So I identified myself as a health and wellness coach for a while. And then I was like, this is all dieting and this is still doing the same thing. And I was like, that doesn't really fit with me either. That doesn't really feel authentic. I was just kind of like, oh, I'm a food relationship coach. And then I was like, the idea of being somebody's coach means that I'm going to coach you along to a better path, right?
Right.
And to me, when it comes to food relationship, I don't think that there's a better path that fits everyone. So basically what I found myself doing in sessions was we're basically strategizing. Sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes this is going to be something that you need to do. And then in the next context, you're going to have to do something totally different. So we're strategizing to figure out how you can actually create this healthy relationship or even understand the relationship, because coaching implies that you're going to help me reach something. Many times we just need to understand what it is that's happening. So I was like, oh, this strategist sounds a lot more authentic to me. And I love talking about food relationship because I definitely think that's what it is. We're in a relationship with food in our bodies. So I was like, I think food relationship strategist fits. And so that's what I just started kind of latching on to. And so I started marketing myself as such. And I was like, it doesn't really fit anybody's one realm. So this is how it came about.
As of late, have you found yourself being more passionate about helping people with strategizing other things? Or do you find that the food relationship strategizing has been still your number one, like, baby?
Yeah, so food relationship, yeah, that's definitely my baby. But when we talk about kind of like the relationship that we have with food, I often bring in the relationship that we have with other people because food relationship is a very new term. And so it's really difficult for people to wrap their minds around that you can be in a relationship with food. And so what that even looks like many times is kind of lost on people and it kind of goes over their heads. So what I find myself doing many times is saying, okay, let's think about the relationship that you had that where you experienced X, Y, and Z. That is very much what you are experiencing now with food. And people are like, oh, so inadvertently, we are doing relationship work too, putting it in terms of like a human to human interaction, but really then once we grasp that concept, taking it back over to food and applying it there. So people often tell me, oh, I'm doing this with people I'm in a relationship with, like I can apply this there. So although I don't market myself or promote myself as working on people's relationships, it kind of comes out because that's the thing that we all kind of understand.
Mm-hmm. So clinically speaking, what on average is considered food and alcohol addiction for women?
Okay, so I had a lot of thought about this, right? So I was like, okay, so we've been all kind of promoted this idea of alcohol addiction. So by definition, an addiction is something that you kind of put yourself in harm's way to attain. So if we think about alcohol addiction, we know that it's causing adverse impact, it's causing you some negative consequences, it's impacting your health in significantly negative ways, yet you're still consuming the very thing that's causing you ill health and you're going out of your way to get it. So that in definition is what addiction is, right? Something that you continue to try to get even though you know it places you in danger. If we talk about alcohol addiction, we kind of have to bring in the chemical parts of alcohol addiction and the thing that we are addicted to in our brains. The brain is addicted to the substance alcohol. So you begin to develop a reliance on that. Even having alcohol or choosing alcohol is a preference. So somebody who develops an alcohol addiction has to have first tried it at some point and said, oh, okay, this works. Try it. And then sometimes if there's a predisposition to it, genetic disposition, then they may start to like it and like the effects that it has on it. And then after a while, sometimes the brain and body becomes dependent on it. So much so that your body can't function without it. It's an addiction. The thing that I find difficult with food and the word addiction is pairing those together is because we cannot live without food. So to say that somebody has a food addiction, I think implies that there's another option. And I'm not quite sure that makes a lot of sense in my mind. I can see based on the plain definition of people going out of their way to get something that puts them in harm's way that they know is damaging their bodies. But here's where I get trapped up. I'm like, well, is that rooted in diet culture? Is this idea that you are putting yourself in harm's way because of weight issues? So somebody could easily argue, well, if you're obese, then you are putting yourself in danger. And I would argue back, is that diet culture stuff you're spewing out? What is the research that you have behind this? And then so people like to kind of talk about BMI and they like to throw out information around kind of like, well, if you're fat, then you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Is that diet culture rhetoric? Because a lot of it is. And if you look at the research, it's very inconsistent. And I'm not saying that, we shouldn't take care of our bodies and we shouldn't try to be our healthiest selves. But what I am saying is that we tend to think because of diet culture that it belongs within one weight range and that health is specific to a weight class. And that's not true and that's not accurate. I think a lot of diet culture, fat phobic things are being spewed when we talk about food addiction. And then it's a lot of fear. So I think that if you make people afraid, which is typically what happens, then by throwing the word addiction out there, then you're creating this fear in people like, oh, well, I don't want to be that. I have to do something about this. And it creates this urgency to then get on the correct path, which is then consuming diet culture. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So I feel like I'm wondering, is this something that is true or is this something that a term that has been created so that we adhere to the realms of diet culture and keep fat phobia alive, that kind of thing?
So is there an amount of food which can be consumed that is unhealthy for a human?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that people can, sit around and eat all day. You definitely have to have boundaries. I liken it to if we're in a relationship and you only want to be around your partner all the time and you don't even give yourself time to take care of yourself or even have your own room to breathe. What do we call that in the mental health world? Codependence, fakeness, So if you do the same with food, then yes, there are boundary issues. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have boundaries. I'm saying the way that it's wrapped up and presented to us is in terms of, oh, you have something that is significantly wrong with you. You need to hurry up and correct course. The thing that's not paid attention to is a lot of times people are engaging in this behavior because we have not been taught how to have a healthy relationship with food because of diet culture, which I think is heavily rooted in racism and other systemic oppressive methods. If all of that stuff is systemic, then many times we're gravitating towards a source, is what I'll say, that is bringing us some sort of comfort. People can argue, well, isn't that the same with alcohol? Yes. So I can see how people would use the term food addiction, but I think we're using it to really scare people, to really create this urgency, to really promote more fat phobia, to really promote diet culture. So what I think is happening, though, is we're doing that without really helping people understand, how do we get here? How do we get to a place where people are more reliant on food for coping than anything else?
Mm-hmm. So what is the root of food addiction?
I think the root is not having any other means of coping, and using that one for being heavily reliant on food as the primary source of coping. You're using it over any other means of coping, and you're not allowing yourself to see that other things could be helpful in helping you deal with whatever issue it is that you're using food to soothe. The root of it is, some of it can be trauma. Some of it can be, ways that people learn to cope when they felt neglected and abandoned. That's the thing that soothed them when nobody else was there to show them love or validation. That's the thing that makes them feel whole. That's the thing that makes them feel complete. I was actually on the phone with a client in a session last night talking about binge eating. And so people would lump binge eating with food addiction. What we kind of talked about was having this void that kind of lives in your gut area, your midpoint, your core area, always needing to try to fill that up. And so we don't know if that's our heart filling a void. We don't know if we feel a void in our gut. And so we eat, hoping to fill that hole. And food is the thing that makes us feel physically full. So when we're physically full, we can't feel that emotional void. We binge eat so that we can feel that and soothe ourselves in that way. And that becomes the thing that we know works. That becomes the thing that we know will help us. And that's the thing that we rely on. And we're very reluctant to introduce any other coping skills because we don't really know if they're going to work or not.
So are there roles that we give food that we shouldn't for our well-being?
I don't know if I want to say that we shouldn't. Mm-hmm. I think that we vilify food, and I think that we've over-glorified food. Food is super important. I am a self-proclaimed foodie. I love food, but I think that food is vilified. If food is a thing that I am not allowed to have, what do you think I'm going to want? If food is the thing that is so bad, what do you think I'm going to want? What do you think I'm going to rebel against? What do you think? So if that's the way that we are describing food, labeling food, conditioning people to see food, then yeah, we're going to gravitate towards that very thing. And then we're going to overconsume it because why? We may not be able to have it again. So we may well use it all this time. And that's the way that I think a lot of reliance on food happens, is out of this place of scarcity. So we're going to talk about addiction. I think we've got to talk about all of it, because I think that having a food addiction or labeling something as a food addiction puts the blame on a person for not using food in the right way. And we don't put it on the systems that have made us believe that food is either right or wrong.
Is our society supportive for those who may have an addiction to food in the very clinical way, not in a way where it's like, oh, we're fat phobic? How can you distinguish the difference between true food addiction and just our own personal bias?
Yeah, which is a great way to think about it. I think is really going to be about preference. There's this thing now that people are saying people are addicted to love.
Oh, yeah, I've been seeing that lately.
Let me tell you one of my pet peeves. I am really sick of people coming up with these trendy names for the sake of helping people help themselves. While I love the self-help, these labels that we're placing on things create this huge issue of blame that I think is not fair. So we're talking about love addiction, and you're telling somebody they're addicted to love who never got love or who was traumatized. Then, of course, they would want more and more and more and more of love. So how can you vilify somebody for wanting something? How can we even put this in the same realm of addiction? Do we have space to help people who may have food addictions? I would say no. I think that we have a space where we continue to vilify and shame people around it, but there's no real help around it. One of the reasons that I think that is because there's no real research and clinical studies or work around it. It's just a name that is thrown out there to help people realize that, oh, I need to get on a diet, or, oh, I need to do this to get myself more on the right side of things, because now I'm on the wrong side of things. I struggle with that a lot because there's no science or anything behind any of that.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I'm going in the right direction with the questions that I'm asking, because I keep using the term food addiction, but I'm not even quite sure that I understand up until this point what it really is. So I want to maybe repeat something you may have said, which is food addiction meaning that you kind of have a codependence on food?
Yeah. So I'll tell you. So one of the things that I did, I just Googled food addiction. Right? And I'll tell you the ad that popped up. You hear that? An ad popped up. And it's Noom. Noom is a app or program that promises people that they're going to help them lose weight for good using psychological methods, using cognitive behavioral methods. Can you use cognitive behavior therapy to stop somebody who has a drug addiction?
No.
Can you use cognitive behavior therapy to stop somebody who has an alcohol addiction? So if Noom is the ad that pops up, where is all of these labels coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the people who are promoting these labels and promoting these ideas? So preferential to me, I don't buy it. I think that is just like this man who I watched on Instagram today. He was saying that all fruit is bad. And in the same breath, he was like, if you want to know more about it, buy my book. So I think that people spew things for the sake of setting themselves apart from the industry, setting themselves apart as an expert. And if we go back historically, we've got to become really critical thinkers. And this is what I really want for my people. Become really critical about who is giving you this information and where this information is coming from. If we look at diets, all white men sit at the top of all diets that have been created. Keto, Atkins, paleo, all white men. If you go back even further, diets started with white men, creating this idea that thinness was closer to whiteness. And so the thinner you are, the more European you look. So I think we've got to become a lot more critical around who is telling me this stuff and where am I included in their narrative? That's the thing. Where am I included in this food narrative? Is there any representation of me in this food narrative? And on which side do I stand?
Right.
When you see food addiction, who's the poster child for food addiction? Is that representation you? So then you have to become really critical around, well, why is that? And it's all tied to historical underpinnings. So if food addiction is this poverty-stricken 600-pound life woman of color or indigenous person of color or something like that, then what are they trying to tell us?
Right.
Are they still perpetuating and promoting the same things that have been promoted all throughout history? So when I Googled food addiction and Noom came up, I was like, you know what? This is definitely propaganda. Let me tell you what people say, even on WebMD. So it's basically this idea that parts of your brain are triggered, like when you take cocaine or heroin. Those centers in the brain are activated when you eat certain foods like sugar, fat, and salt.
Mm-hmm.
Saying because those things, those same areas in the brain are activated, then yes, they have the same addictive qualities because they hit on the same pleasure points in the brain. If that's what we're going to wrap it up in, then I guess you have an addiction. But that's not enough for me. Like, we need to dig deeper. Just because the same centers in the brain are activated, so then am I addicted to Netflix?
Right.
Am I addicted to pretty faces? I think we could become addicted to anything at that point then.
Yeah, and that might come back to the fact that people are saying this, you were addicted to love, or I was addicted to love. Yeah.
Yes. I think we just got to be critical, like, and ask more questions before we jump to a label for ourselves that continues to pathologize us. I look at it as in terms of a relationship. So if there was a model in which I had to look at that, I would definitely say we have an over-reliance. We have a codependence on food. So we may be too reliant on food. I won't go as far as to call it an addiction, but the lens at which I work with people who use food to cope more than they use other things would be the relationship that we have with food. We are more reliant on food to get us through than we are reliant on other things. And so we may have an unhealthy relationship with food.
Got it.
Yeah, to me, that's less pathological. I think it's more empowering. I think it makes people want to do more work. But I think we're so used to only being able to move when things are severe that I think some people like it when we can label it as an addiction. It makes them move. Just me personally now, I'm not going to play into that unless I see some other research outside of Google. that shows that there is something that's happening, because I think we can make that argument for everything. Because in that case, people could say we are addicted to weave. Black women are addicted to weave, to nails. Like we can't live without lashes, right? And so would we go as far as to call those things addictions? And that's just the way that I look at it. I remember back when I was a health and wellness coach in 2015, I used to say that there was a such thing as a sugar addiction, and I no longer believe that. But what the information that I was using was the same information that I just saw when I Googled. The brain centers light up when you eat sugar, the same ones as heroin and cocaine, because that's the information that they want us to continue to disseminate. Now, I don't have enough evidence to support this idea of a food addiction. Later in life, next year, 2 years from now, if there's more evidence, would I agree that there's a food addiction? I don't know. But right now, there's not enough evidence for me to support that and continue to tell people that there is a such thing as a food addiction. The book that we use to diagnose is called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Food addiction is not a diagnosable condition. It doesn't have enough research to be even in that manual that we all use as clinicians and physicians. So that's one thing that we have to remember.
Got it. Is it possible to improve our relationships with food?
Yes, we can absolutely heal our relationship with food and have healthy relationships with food, just like we can with people. People can kind of evolve from this over-reliance on a person for their safety, for their security, for their comfort. And you can definitely learn how to engage and start to trust yourself. A lot of that is rooted in trust, confidence, safety, trauma, a lot of that stuff. And so if you can heal from trauma, you can most certainly heal and create a different relationship with food.
What are ways that you typically work with people to help them transition into a better relationship with food?
So a lot of my work starts out targeting three main areas: is mindset, triggers, and habits. So we do a lot of mindset work at the beginning, because that's where a lot of our understanding, expectations, language around food rests. I have people take a real close look at where they first learned to engage with food in the ways that they do. So that may be looking at their family of origin. That may be looking at the things that they learned about food. Food was bad, food was good, the categorization of it. Looking at ways that it's been kind of perpetuated all around them in society, looking at the ways that they engage with it on social media. So once we understand what's at play, then we can begin to go in and create boundaries around the things that they want to change, the things that they want to keep. So there are some cultural things that we definitely want to keep that diet culture does not allow you to keep. So you want to keep those traditions, you want to keep those practices. So we go in and we think about ways that they could actually be helpful versus harmful. So if you definitely are somebody who's coming to me and you're like, well, the issue is I hear what you're saying, but I still have high blood pressure. Well, we need to definitely put something in place so that you are not continuing to raise your blood pressure in a way that is going to have you have a stroke or things like that. So we have to put some practical things in place. Do we completely discount your culture or traditional practices? No, but we strategize about where that can fit in. Maybe it fits in every other month. Maybe it fits in every other week, but we can't continue to engage in those practices every single day for the sake of your well-being. A large part of doing this work also is coming to terms with what are my rules for myself? What are the rules that I have that I did not know I had? Or how do I even create rules for myself because I'm so used to other people telling me what I need to do? We spend a lot of time and people think that, oh, this is going to happen. Give me 30 days and I'm going to create a habit. Give me 21 days. And it doesn't happen that way. Long journey of unlearning the things that we're taught around food. There's a lot of exposure type of activities that I have people do. So if people are like, well, I would never buy deli meat, then one of my assignments is go buy deli meat. Mm-hmm. And sit with your thoughts around it. What anxiety is coming up? What thoughts are you having around it? And it's a lot of observational work, a lot of mindful work. What things have you been told about deli meat? What things have you kind of told yourself that really may not be based in reality? If you're afraid of bread, go buy bread. Afraid of rice, let's sit down to a bowl of rice and have our session and let's eat and see what comes up for you. And so what people will come to realize is that I have a lot of anxiety and fear around foods, and I'm engaging with this not from a place of real facts, but from a place of fear. If I eat this bowl of rice, it's going to immediately make me fat.
Right.
I do a mix between a lot of mindset work and a lot of exposure work, which is based within the realm of habits and triggers.
What are some ways that you believe people can start coping with their stress today?
What I tell people is to become real mindful of the things that they need. So if you're using food to cope, right, and you're using food to cope with stress, I would really encourage people to identify what is it that you're needing and identify that, and then ask yourself, is this food going to help me resolve this? Or am I avoiding and kind of putting a Band-Aid over it? Are there other things that I could do to really get at the thing that I actually need? So for instance, if I'm stressed and I just need some validation around how difficult my day has been, can food give me that? Some people may argue yes, but then I'm going to ask how. Well, it makes me feel better. Did you get the validation though? No, well, it just made me feel better. Okay, feeling better is great, but did we get what we came here for? Mm-hmm. And if you came here for validation, food didn't give you that, how else can we get it? Right. So I can either tell myself, or I can talk to my therapist about it. I can talk to my coach about it. Or I can call my sister or my friend. Mm-hmm. But we operate on autopilot so much that we don't recognize that those are the other options that are available to us. Because we then feel better, and then we think that we've solved that problem. And what we don't realize is that we've just kind of placed it on the back burner until another time. And that's how it continues to accumulate.
Are there any known programs that are out there specific to our relationships with food?
Yeah, I work with a program called Balance 365 that actually helps people build a healthy relationship with food. I also have a program called Taking Back My Body that is a food relationship program. Intuitive eating is a food relationship protocol. Health at Every Size is a food relationship protocol. So if people are looking to work on food relationship and not weight, those are some great places to start. Intuitive eating protocols, Health at Every Size protocols, and getting with some dietitians who promote intuitive eating and getting back to learning your body and learning how. Because when you talk about food addiction, most food addiction is geared towards people who are bigger in size. Rarely do you see a person who is small say, oh, she has a food addiction. If we're really going to get technical about it, we really have to think about, am I trying to cure my food relationship so that I can lose weight? Because then if that's the issue, then we kind of go back into that whole spiral of things. But if you're really looking to improve your relationship with food, a lot of that has to do with getting back to trusting your body to be able to tell you what it wants as it relates to food versus a diet program telling you what you need to eat.
You recently came out with therapy cards, right? So how can we use your therapy cards to improve our relationship?
I'm so glad that you asked. So I am actually looking at the cards now. And so I just pulled up the mindset deck, right? So the deck says, what negative judgments do you have about yourself right now? All of these cards were not created specifically for the relationship with food. You can definitely ask this question to yourself as it relates to what negative judgments do I have about myself as it relates to food?
Right.
I don't have control. I eat too much. I'm a slob. You know, most people say I'm out of control. That's the thing that people say all the time is that I'm out of control. So you could use this card to ask yourself that question. Oh, what self-limiting thoughts do you have that keep getting in your way? I'll never be able to do it. I'll never be able to lose weight. I'll never be able to correct my relationship with food. I've tried everything. That narrative that we keep hearing. So you could definitely use these cards over the course of several different contexts. That's the mindset card. I'll tell you what a habit card could be. So you would definitely pull it and say, okay, I'm going to specifically ask these questions in terms of food, and I'm going to see what comes up. So which ineffective habits did you once have that you no longer have? Within the context of food, what habits that you once had that did not work for you that you no longer have? So basically asking, how did you get rid of them? Mm-hmm. Also, what habits do you want to develop to push you closer to your goals? This is specifically around food. Like, so what food habits do you want to develop? So that's habits. We could go towards the trigger cards. And if we're talking about food, there's a card in here that I really like that says, which emotion is it most difficult for you to sit with? People know that may be, I cannot sit with being lonely or stressed because I want to eat every time. Or there's another one that says, when I feel fear, what do I do? You know, when I feel fear in a relationship with others, what do I do? So we can easily insert that with food. When I feel fear with food, what do I do? And so you can use these to address many of the issues that come up with food as well.
Mm-hmm. You also have a book, Food is Not Bae.
So Food is Not Bae came about because not that food is not good and not that food is not boo, but many times when we get into a relationship with people, and if it's a toxic relationship, we tend to put bae over everybody else in the universe, even ourselves. we tend to kind of like go in and just forget that we even are a person when it comes to bays. So what we end up doing is placing ourselves low on the priority list and just not really taking care of ourselves. And so when I came up with the concept of food is not bae, I wanted us to talk about ways that we over rely on food and put food and our engagement and interaction with food above everything else that we do. And how to get back to a place where we're engaging in a healthier, more reciprocal relationship versus us just allowing food to guide and dictate our behaviors, and we're taking more power in the relationship.
Thank you. I want to go back a little bit and just talk about what my takeaways are regarding food addiction. So what I was able to take away was that it's not a real thing. And if it is, it's not well studied. It's not something that we are able to say that is one, we can't diagnose it because it's not in the
DSM.
Yes, the DSM. Yes. You cannot go to a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist and they're going to tell you, yeah, you have this particular addiction. So how can we get better at not feeding into that? And to those who are in that realm of research, what can they do or are interested in that realm of research? Like, what can they do to kind of get the ball rolling on this?
Yeah, I would tell people, we joke about a lot of things. Like we call everybody narcissistic.
Lord, yes.
Yeah, we call everybody toxic. So we just latch on to words and we just kind of run with it. So one thing that I would just encourage people to do is just become really critical and ask yourself, is this really what I have? But really ask yourself, would I characterize this as the same thing that I see with people who have drug addictions? And if you feel like it is, I definitely encourage you to go speak to a licensed provider and ask them if they can provide you a more formal diagnosis about the things that you're doing and those symptoms so that you get a better intervention. Because there are no real interventions for food addiction besides dieting. I know I'm engaging in these behaviors. I'm not feeling well about it. So what can I then do for this? Really becoming critical and asking yourself that. And if I do have a love addiction, a food addiction, what am I going to do about it? Or am I just happy with the label and it sounds good and it's trendy and that's enough?
Mm-hmm. And do you have any advice for researchers in that area? Like, what would you want to see more of?
I definitely would want us to qualitatively define that and conceptualize that in a way that goes beyond the brain activity. And really look at the ways that it presents itself across cultures, across groups, and really begin to take some things into consideration as far as culture goes. I would love for us to dissect diet culture and start to bring that into the therapy world. We are not doing that at all. People don't even realize that we're really relying on the medical model to inform a lot of the things that we research. And a lot of those things is not culturally competent. I would really love us, even as researchers, to think a little bit differently about how we are labeling things. And let's really start to intertwine and bring diet culture into the ways that we're even looking at our own clients. Like, what lens are we looking at them through? And are we continuing to perpetuate things without even knowing?
Do you have any advice specific for Black women coping with stress?
I would definitely tell us to set boundaries and rest. Boundaries and rest. Boundaries and rest. Because we love to say yes to a lot of things and we can do a lot of things. And I'm talking to myself because I'm one of the people who love to say yes to things. And taking care of ourselves first and working through that guilt that we feel, that institutionalized guilt is the systemic guilt that I feel like we have when we're saying no to people, like we feel like we can't tell people no. And so I would definitely tell us to get rest, set boundaries, learn how to say no, and learn how to sit with that discomfort that comes with the no. Learn how to sit with the fact that people may not be excited or pleased with you. And that's totally okay. And that was something that was actually conditioned and ingrained in us, that we had to be everything to everybody and just to give yourself a break.
Can you tell us what you're working on and ways that we can work with you in the future?
Yes. So I'm, of course, pushing these decks like it's nobody's business. So if you want to support or grab a deck of My Therapy Cards, you can go to mytherapycards.com. There is a self-exploration and self-insight deck created for Black women to help us dig deeper and kind of get ourselves unstuck in the areas of mindset, habits, and triggers. The thing that I'm working on next with that is I have a Facebook community where I help people figure out where to start with the cards and have general conversation around the cards, but I'm going to be promoting and starting a more coaching program around the cards so people can do more of that work and have more accountability with doing that work with the therapy cards. I have the Taking Back My Body program, which is the food relationship program. There's a masterclass that I have, and then there's a 90-day accountability group that goes with that. And so if you would like more information on that, you can go to drebony.com. And if you want to connect with me or have more questions for me, you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Ebony Online, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter as Dr. Ebony Online as well.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to connect with me, I am at The Research Her on the socials and at theresearchher.com. And until next time, I holla.